that's what you ought to be. It's good to be different.
Future reference? Right-handed men don't hold it with their left. Just one of those things.
What's going on, everybody? This is Shaun with StrangeLand Oddities at the first annual Senoia Summer Dead Bash. I am here with Xander Berkeley, one of the featured artists who is also Gregory on The Walking Dead. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. I think it went well. What did you think?
Actually, I love the atmosphere. It's not your typical con. It was more of an art show.
Yeah, I don't even like the term con. You know, I have associations with the term con, like con artist. Now, maybe they could turn that into something since it's an artist's thing, but still, con sounds like...
Although Gregory on The Walking Dead...
He's a con artist! He's a con artist! I know, but I'm not that in real life, and I'm more of an artist than I am...
Yeah, you were saying that you're...
A celebrity, and more than I am anything like Gregory, just...
You said that Gregory is...
Just not to say anything bad about him.
Is a pussy compared to Xander.
Well, I hate to give people names. I hate to judge anyone. But he does what he does for the reasons that he does, and I think, by and large, he does it for the same reasons most people would do it, to stay alive. And I think that we've all been trained from the time we were knee-high to a grasshopper to identify with heroes and big badass villains, and maybe victims that have learned to become avenging angels, all of which are a little unrealistic in the real day in and day out life. And that's part of why it's escapist entertainment, and we like to escape in it, and we don't like to be reminded of ourselves. And in a way, people are repulsed, it's my theory alone, by Gregory, because there's something a little disturbing and disconcerting and a little bit maybe troubling about him, because maybe they too, as all are through the DNA code, designed for self-preservation. And were they in a situation, like any number of these situations, they may or may not be so heroic that they would put their lives on the line for others, but rather they would scurry for cover or sacrifice another.
Are you excited for season 9?
I am, but you know, it's an amazing series, and I think it's fascinating that they do include a character like this, because I really don't think it's been since I was a kid anyway, since Lost in Space, that we've seen a character that had this degree of kind of cowardice, and that is very human, in conjunction with the degree of bravado and arrogance and self-assurance that Gregory has. And I love that flip, that contradiction, because usually you think of cowardice, if it's going to be portrayed, it's going to be portrayed by a little nerdy, sort of meek character. And I've played a lot of big, badass characters in my day. I've intentionally, believe it or not, flown under the radar, because I never... My mother lived to be 102. She had me in her 40s, and she would have been 105 today had she lived. And I've been thinking of her all day. Every time on the artwork, I've been making a point of putting today's date because it's her birthday. And when I went out to Hollywood 39 years ago, and I can say it now because my wife and our 2 daughters and I are packing up and moving from the west to the east, and I'm really happy to be migrating back to the East Coast. And when I left the East Coast, my mother's originally from Texas, but she migrated east, and she said something to me that chilled me to my bones, to the marrow of my bones. First of all, she said, well, honey, you know money is only a problem if you have too much or too little of it, don't you? And I said, well, Mother, I've only experienced the latter. I have yet to experience the former, so I'll have to take your word for it. Fair enough. You'll see. Okay. And then she said, now with regard to fame, honey, you just be careful what you ask for, because you may just get it. And then what? And then what? And that I swear to God, stayed with me to the marrow of my bones because I wanted to be an actor. I was born to be a storyteller. We grew up without any dough. My mother could sew, and so she made me costumes. And I went out into the woods not to perform for others, but to become and transform into characters and time travel. And that has always been my jam. And since day one, and my father was an artist, and he caught wind of it, and he saw that I liked this thing, and at a certain point he gave me a makeup kit. Not that kind of makeup, stage makeup, and like derma wax and nose putty and things, and I could, make myself look other than myself. And I have always been fascinated by the possibility of transformation from one character to the next. That's really been the thing that excited me the most, to serve a story, to serve a director in their vision, a writer, a storyteller in telling a story effectively. And so I'll take whatever character I can conceivably play and transform myself into in the telling of a story.
Is that what you do with your artwork?
Well, my artwork has been just something I was born able to do and loved doing, and it kept me company. I was never lonely, I was never bored, and it was a vehicle through which I could study humanity, and everywhere I went I could be the observer. And part of my mother's injunction about be careful what you ask for with fame, I took to art. I realized very early on that if I became famous, everybody would be looking at me. And my muse, the thing that inspired me in life, was studying people and observing people. And being in cafes, she wanted me to be something fancy like a diplomat or an ambassador or something that involved helping other people. And I knew that was what I was here for, and I've sort of tried to do that in my life as much as I could. And in an invisible way, just like I've been the sly man as an actor and flown under the radar, I've been able to work away from the bureaucratic red tape and work with ambassadors and diplomats and the head of student unions and stuff in foreign countries. I traveled a lot. I used my opportunities for acting not to become famous, but they're going to pay me to go to that country? I've never been to that country. Let me go. And I went there, and usually when you're with a film, they're excited to have a film in town because it means you're bringing commerce into that town, into that city, into that country, and they will introduce you around and have a night at the embassy, and really speaking about countries, not towns or cities. And then you've got contacts at the embassy, and you've got a few phone numbers, and then if you're an artist, especially if you're the bad guy, you've got a lot of days off while they're shooting the heroes. And I'm going immediately. I go to the art store. I find out, asking questions. They don't speak English. You find out where the art stores are, and you get there, and you get your art supplies. You get your drawing pads. You get your charcoal. You get your erasers. You get your deal, and you invariably find cafes near the art stores where the artists hang out. And that's where, having been in art films, usually I'm recognized by cinephiles, and because they watch a movie more than once, they'll watch it over and over, and that's where I get recognized from various cult films and stuff. And then you get invited into the culture, and you get to learn about the culture, and you'll meet interesting individuals that would never have access to the deputy ambassador or the junior diplomat. But you, without having to spend 3 years in bureaucratic red tape, can say, what are you going to do next Saturday? You know that wood-fired pizza joint down on such and such a boulevard? Let's meet there. Okay. And you get the guy that was part of like the Coca-Cola guy that was trying to support something, and you get the deputy ambassador, and you get the head of the student union all together, and they don't know that they're going to, and you get to start, you know what, you guys ought to have a conversation about this and that and the other thing. And before you know it, things are happening. And you get a letter 5 years later saying, thank you so much. This would have never happened without your having introduced us. And so that's from my mother. And the study of people and sitting in cafes and drawing them has fed me as an actor throughout my entire career. And my father was an artist. I just inherited the ability to draw. And I was interested in lots of artists that he exposed me to early on. And it wasn't about the skill of drawing so much as something else more emotional and expressive. And so I was really interested in the work of the German expressionists. And my father taught me a lot about film and PBS. When I was a kid, like teenager, started running these incredible series of foreign films that we lived in New Jersey, and you couldn't get into the city to see these great Fellini movies, Truffaut and Kurosawa, this incredible wave of amazing films that were being made. But suddenly in the 70s, they're being shown on PBS late at night. My mom would be going to bed, my father, I'd come down. Mom's going to bed? Come down, he wanted company. And he'd teach me about the composition of each frame in the film. That's where I learned my love of character acting, because he was a big fan of the actors who could transform and become different characters. And it all just sort of blended together, because as an actor, you're waiting and you're relying upon other people to determine your fate. As I like to put it, you are subject to the merciless vicissitudes of others and fate in general. And as an artist, if you work every day, you know, you get your art supplies, they don't cost that much. You get your paper, you get your charcoal, you get your graphite, you get your, kneaded eraser, and you go.
Let's show the camera some of your...
Yeah, I'm talking a lot, aren't I?
Oh, no, you're doing fine.
I like to talk. I told him I was going to talk. He thought I was all talked out. I'm just beginning. Cut this thing up. No, I'm done. Yeah, so anyway, this has been the thing that kept me going. This is a self-portrait as an example of an obsessive-compulsive disorder. I didn't have to show my artwork because I was lucky enough to get work as an actor. And so this just kept me sane-ish. Because I didn't have to rely on others to determine when or how I was being creative. I got to look at myself in some dusty old mirror when nobody else was around to draw, and I was back home in my studio, and it was just me and my reflection. And I could reflect on life and myself at different stages, and I could build up. I had this idea because I had the luxury, because I was lucky enough to get work as an actor, and I would have time when I wasn't working as an actor, and this engaged me, so I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring and getting anxiety about where my next job would be. I was working as an artist in my studio, and I could paint over and over and over, if I didn't have that much space, the same painting, thinking I'm building history, I'm building time, and I'm putting energy, thought, and layers, like I do as an actor. I like to build characters that are made up of layers. Well, my paintings are made up of layers, and I actually get in there, because I sculpt and paint, build up a bunch of layers with oil paint, let them dry, go away on a job, on location, come back, it's dry. Now I got my carving tools, and I can carve back in, and I can show time in a different way than painters who have to make their living as painters could ever do, and anybody in their right mind would ever do, because it's not a normal thing to do. And I also have a bunch of drawings downstairs. I should have brought up an example of one or two that show that I also do things really quickly. I work really quickly and I work real slow. And they got no more water in this. That's it for the water. This is another layered piece. I did this without anybody in mind. Again, I didn't have anybody in the studio. There was nobody willing to sit for me. And I just had an idea from different people that I'd known and studying people in general. And there's a woman that I got to be friends with on Twitter whose name is Catherine Ward. And she's a cancer survivor, and she's struggling right now with another round of it. She's a single mother, and she's a wise woman, and she's just deep and cool, and she became a friend a while back, and I named this piece after her. I'd finished it before we became friends, and I was always looking for a title, and she's nowhere near as weathered as this piece is, but her soul feels old and tough and cool, and I called it, her handle is Surf Mom, I think something, and so I just called it Surf Mom the Seer, S-E-E-R, because I just felt like she was seeing through her pain, seeing through her hardship, and seeing in the long distance what was best for her kid, and she's just dead cool, and so I wanted to honor her.
She had cancer survivor.
Yeah. A lot of people out there, man. A lot of people. A lot of my little crowd of I have a thing on Twitter, Xander Berkeley Friday, hashtag XBF, and a lot of them have struggled with one thing or another, and that's one of the things I like. Many things I don't like, but one of the things I like is the community of connectivity that you get, people looking out for and supporting each other, and if there's anything I do like about celebrity, it's that feeling of oneness, because that's my belief, is that we're all one thing and we're all connected. We need to care more about each other. Mm-hmm. And so with this, it's trying to show layers and depth and feeling and time and soul. There's a guy that my wife and I met when we did the show 24. We met on the pilot, and we got a couple of our own spin-offs, 8 and 11 years old right now, thriving. Here's to them. Who, God bless, my mother lived to be 102. I always used to worry because she was old when she had me that she wasn't going to live as long as her. Now my kids are going through the same anxiety about me, but they got to know her, and they really have her in them. And the other day, Alwyn said, "You know, Daddy," and she's actually very incredibly, far more than I am, eloquent and articulate from a very early age on. But she loves to play with words sometimes. She said, "You know," she called my mother Amma. "You know, Daddy, I think Amma was maybe the most wisdomy person ever." And we all miss her every day. And so I just can't stop thinking about my beloved mother. So grateful for my life and everything she gave me. And there's this guy that my wife and I met in London, the only other time I ever did a con before joining the cult of The Walking Dead was when we were doing 24, and a friend of ours was having a birthday party in Morocco. Like, that's way too fancy for us, and like, we're never going to get there. And then, wait, you want to, there's a convention, what? That want George and Nina from 24 to be, and they'll fly us to London? That's not too far. Would they get us to Morocco? They will. We'll sign anything. We'll do anything. And we met this amazing guy, the Astral Gypsy is his handle on Twitter. The Astral, not the asshole. Because he ain't not I play an asshole. This is Al Davison is the opposite of an asshole. This guy is a paraplegic. He's in a wheelchair, and yet he's a high-level martial artist. He's an inspiration to so many people, and he works to provide for so many causes. And I can't even list all the causes, but this is one that he's involved with now for the survivors of the Las Vegas massacre. And he did this portrait of Gregory. It's got a little touch of me. I don't like to confuse the two, but I think there's a little bit of reflectivity in Gregory's eyes that reminds me of my own. And he's a fabulous artist, and I'm signing these for people at cons instead of headshots, because they kind of freak me out. Because all the money from these will go to the survivors and to their families and the people that were injured and all the rest of it. And this is another that he did that humbles me because I love it, and it's for his own pet project, Muscle Memory, You can look him up, Al Davis and the Astral Gypsy, and this is, I call it Zango. He likes me as an artist too, and he did this of me as Van Gogh. Kind of cool.
I like it.
People have thought I bore a resemblance to Vincent, but I think it's just in terms of maybe borderline madness. Maybe it's the angle of my nose. A friend of mine, Kent Jones, and I were employed to help create an event in 2001 at the Playboy Mansion honoring Arthur C. Clarke for 2001 Space Oddity, Kubrick's film. And we made the masks of the gorilla masks, and just after exactly like the ones from the film, and these three incredible acrobats did a recreation that they created of the monolith and the monkeys with the bones in front of it. And so I had this gorilla costume. We'd bring it out for parties every now and again. Okay, there I said it. And this is our backyard, and that we're going to be leaving. It's an amphitheater. It's beautiful. I love LA. It's been very, very good to me. I'm just leaving because it's too hot. We're too white. We're burning up out there. No, I'm kidding. It's the traffic. And the hat I got in Nicaragua on a film in 1987 when the war was going on. That's another story. I won't tell it. Alex Cox, Sid and Nancy, final scene in Sid and Nancy I shoot. He gets a, "Get your shots. We're going to Nicaragua." And I said, "Isn't there a war going on there?" He goes, "Exactly." Anyway, that's another story. Dietmar Kohl is a brilliant Austrian photographer. He took this picture and this other one, and the profits that I make from signing this go to cause Dietmar Kohl, who lost his partner to cancer. His wife and he were together for 25 years inseparably, and he's still in a state of complete shock in her absence, and he's had a little hard time getting back on his feet, and I think he's just freaking brilliant. And this is a collaboration that we did like the other one.
I love that piece.
I mean, look at this, come on. I won't tell the whole story from the series Salem that I made this mask for. I've been a mask maker since I was 18. It's a perfect blending of my interest in the theater and art. And Tim Robbins had hired me. No, at first I was just in a play that he was doing, and I had to leave to get, because I got a job. And it was a German expressionist play in 1985. And I ended up making all the masks for them because I felt bad about having to leave the show. And John Cusack ended up doing the same play in Chicago because they were friends. And so Catherine Hardwicke, who directed the first Twilight, is this brilliant, she was the production designer of both those shows. And she got me to do the mask for John as well. And so I've been a mask maker for a long time, and Adam was involved with those guys and I'm part of that theater company, Tim's company. And so he was doing this show Salem. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It was on this weird obscure channel, the WGN. A lot of people never saw it just because they never heard of that. But you seen it, yeah. Yeah, you would. You kind of that occult type, aren't you? You're interested in that dark stuff, ain't you? Just a little bit. It's a wild guess. Mm-hmm. Adam is the guy who created the show. Harvard grad, USC Film School. I did his student film, The Necromancer, or something like that, in 1985. And he's maybe one of the most well-read, best educated people I've ever known, and certainly the most knowledgeable about witchcraft, the occult, and history of that time. So when he told me he was doing a series based on the 1690s, the witch trials and all the rest of it in Salem, and that the adjustment was that the witches were real and had real power, and well, that sounds interesting. And he said, well, I've got a character that I've got you in mind for from the start. And then he told me that there would be a mask that he would use as a portal through which he would transport himself through time. So that's interesting as well. And since you're a mask maker, maybe you start to work on that now before the show gets picked up. So we back and forth about it, and I've been working on this mask. It's quite a process to make a mask like this that looks like it's your ancestors for 700 years, based on the features of your ancestors and old enough to be that old. Maybe I've talked enough.
Well, I do appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your artwork and being a part of the first Senoia Summer Dead Bash. It's been an honor to interview you. And hopefully there's a second Senoia Summer Dead Bash.
Well, I hope there is too. I love Scott Spillman and I love these other artists that, you know, for me, like I said, odd as it is for an actor to be reluctant about fame and or celebrity, I'm much more comfortable I can get in front of a camera as a character. This is odd and always has been odd for me, but the artwork is something that I'm finally sort of finding. This merge when I was at the conventions first of all, nobody wants Gregory's autograph because he's a douchebag. Who wants a douchebag's autograph? Maybe if we were playing darts. Well, you do. Well, bless your heart. No, he's not. He's badass. I've played badasses. I get it. People are drawn to that. That's one thing. It's a whole other thing. It's a whole other level of sacrificing vanity to play the douchebag who is the coward, and people are disgusted by it. And it's quite a thing to play it on a show that's as popular as this show is. There is a reason why. It's wildly difficult to put myself out there in the first place. So you sort of want to be and have to be a part of this tribal community that goes to these cons. But it's wild for me, having done 250 films and television shows over the years, and then lay it all out there, and then because you play a character that is...
Your body is a work.
Nobody cares about your body of work. They're not lining up for you. They're lining up for the people that they identify with or want to identify with for whatever reason. So it's a very specific thing. And for me, when that was happening, I was like, I'm not going to stand here twiddling my thumbs, freaking out that nobody's in my line. It's not a popularity contest. I got to get the hell out of here. And I would scurry over to the artist side and find solace, as I always have, in art. And I bonded with all the artists and enjoyed their company and loved what they were doing. And I get what it is to be a struggling artist, and so I supported them, and I'm here to support them and these causes. And I love people and I love artists. And here's to it.
All right. Thank you very much, Xander Berkeley. Catch him on season 9 of The Walking Dead.
And I'm in that new hot Johnny Depp movie called City of Lies.
City of Lies. Check it out, people. StrangeLand Oddities out.